Hey folks, in yet another announcement that everybody already knew, Pentax has finally officially announced the Pentax K-1 full-frame DSLR plus a couple of lenses. Let's take a look. Hey folks, before we look at this, new gear is fantastic, but if you want to improve your photography, learning how to use your existing gear is going to be more valuable. Check out my Take Control of the Light course with Matt and Tina. We go through everything you need to start identifying different kinds of light, working out the kind of results you want, and what you can do to go from how it is to how you want it to be. And you get to join her on a bunch of fun assignments as well. So, talking about the K-1, so there's a huge army of Pentaxians, I like to call them, Pentax lovers, and I really like them overall. Pentax cameras offer fantastic value. When you look at what they offer compared to the competition, they tend to just completely dominate it. And unlike some, Sony, Nikon, Canon, Leica fans, I don't hear too many militant Pentax people who just completely discount all of the downsides. They seem to be really pragmatic people, and I think the reason is you do just get so much for your money. When you look at a mid-range or high-end APS-C Pentax camera and compare it to the equivalent Canon or Nikon, you get so much more plus weather sealing, pretty much in all of the cases. But for a long time, people have been dying for a full frame option. So they've got all these APS-Cs and their tiny, weeny little ridiculous, Q1 camera. And then they've got their medium format 645 and Z. Fantastic, outstanding cameras that have got, world-class sensors in them for like a third of the price of the competition. So there was a big gap there and people have been waiting for a long time. Here it is, finally. Let's talk through the K-1. Now, it's all on paper at this stage. The Pentaxes have tended to perform quite well. We've been waiting a long time for this, so it's not like they've rushed it out to the market to join everyone else quickly in full frame. They've really taken their time to develop this, so I wouldn't expect there to be big bugs with this camera, but until we test it, who knows? And I should get to it in at CP Plus later this month in Japan. I hope I'll see some of you over there. Off the bat, I think it's an incredibly ugly camera. I don't know, when I look at it from different angles, it's kind of got something that makes me kind of like it, like an ugly puppy, but I don't know. Yes, I would still use it if the looks wouldn't put me off from using it if I was considering it, but it looks very utilitarian. So having a look at the specs, I wanted to compare it to some of the other cameras that are around the same price point to reinforce how much bang for your buck you get here. So the cameras I'm going to be comparing it to, it's mainly around price, but some I've included because of similar specs or features. So at the moment, the Pentax is coming in at $1,800 US. These are all prices from Adorama that I'm pulling off. The D610 from Nikon, its list price is $19.99, so more expensive, but at the moment it's on special, cheaper than the Pentax. The D750 lists for $2,300, but again, it's on special to under $2,000 as I record this, so they're either side of the Pentax if you're going to buy one today. Then the Canon 6D $1,700 list, it's also on special at the moment. And then I'm also going to just here and there refer to some of the Sonys. The Sony A7 II is very close in price to this camera. I know it's mirrorless and the Pentax is DSLR and there's a lot of differences, but there are similarities as well. And then the A7R II, which is $3,200, almost double the price. I'm also throwing that in here and there just because there's a couple of points of comparison that are really worth considering how much you get from the Pentax. So the reason I'm looking at a few different ones there, a lot of the brands have more than one full frame camera, even if you exclude the integrated grip bodies, the sports cameras like the D4, D5 and the 1DX. Canon have got their 5D and 6D, and then Nikon have 3 or 4, the 810, the 810A, 750 and 610, whereas Pentax have come out with this one, and it's an interesting mix, but I think it's more towards the high end. So let's take a look through some of its specs first off the bat. So it's a 36.4 megapixel sensor with no AA filter. So that puts it up there with, the Nikon D810 in terms of resolution. In terms of speed, it's a little bit lower though. It's only doing 4.4 frames per second, which really is quite low. You can bump that up though to, I think it's 6.5 when you're using the APS-C crop. But you know, we're talking full frame. People are excited about full frame, so it's 4.4 you're looking at there. Now, just to get a little bit of a comparison there in terms of resolution, the 610, the 750, and the A7 Mark II are all 24 megapixel chips. The 6D is only a 20.2, and then the A7R2 is 42 megapixel. So it's really up there in terms of resolution. It's the only one of the DSLRs that has in-body image stabilized sensor. It's sensor shift technology, and that means you get a lot of the features like you do with the Sonys that have it built in, that if you're using legacy glass, then you're able to get the stabilization onto those lenses that don't have it, which is great because one of the obvious downsides of Pentax is they now don't have a big range of full frame glass to support it that is autofocus or stabilized. If you know your history, Pentax, you know, made 35mm film cameras obviously, and there are a whole bunch of lenses back from that period. Now, I assume some of the AF ones are going to transfer across, but then all of the manual focus ones you'll also be able to use on here in manual focus, and you'll be able to get the stabilization to come across, so that's a great thing. The screen is 3.2 inch, which is around par for course for this part of the market, or towards the high end actually. Something that separates this one out, it's got the tilty screen. Now, the 750 has that from Nikon, but most of the others don't in the DSLR world. You know, I find it really interesting. A lot of people, professionals included, love touchscreen and love tilty screen, and I'm a bit torn on it. And you know, I'm not surprised that they could possibly like it. Of course, people have different shooting styles. That's perfectly fine. Touchscreen, I've never really gotten into it, but then I never really have had a camera that had it that I've gotten into. So maybe if I had it, I would love it. The tilty screen, there's times where I find it really handy, but it's not that often. And for example, on the right now filming with the A7S2 and the Nikon D4, when I've got the camera down low to be able to tilt the screen up to not have to keep hunching down, or conversely when it's up high to tilt it down so I can see it, it is quite handy. But then out in the field, it's a definite weak point. So being that the Pentax is quite rugged, for me, having that kind of a system is a little bit iffy. Having said that, from the video footage I've seen of this, it's quite an interesting design. The whole housing kind of comes out from the body, and then the screen can pivot from there. From the one or two people I've heard that have actually been hands-on, they say that it's quite well built. Let's get into some of the hardcore specs here. So the Pentax doesn't have a pop-up flash, neither does the 6D or the Sonys, but the Nikons both have it. The maximum shutter speed for the 610, the 750, the 6D is all 1/4000th of a second, whereas the Pentax will go through to 1/8000th. If you don't know how that could be handy, definitely take out my Take Control of the Light course. Having that extra stop of shutter speed can really help you, especially shooting with fast lenses in bright daylight. Viewfinder coverage, it's 100% with 0.7 magnification. It's matching the 610 and the 750. The 6D only has 97% coverage. Video, you know, for something that's coming out is being announced in February 2016, it's a surprise to not have 4K video. Everything seems to be, that's announced these days, has it. It's doing 1080 at 30 frames a second or interlaced up to 60 frames a second. So to be honest, that's 3-year-old specs. That's not great. But having said that, it's the same as the D610 and the same as the D6. The 750 will do 60 frames, but they're all doing 1080. Out of the ones I've mentioned here, it's only the much more expensive A7R2 that has 4K video. ISO range, this is going broader than most of them. It'll do 100 up to 204,000. Whenever I see these numbers thrown out, and I know I'm guilty of it too in the past especially, you say, oh, this one's now going to 204,000 instead of 50,000. It doesn't necessarily mean anything. A lot of people, again, myself included, will say, well, it's going another level up, so hopefully that makes the lower levels cleaner. But it doesn't necessarily do that. It's certainly true that if you look from 5 years ago to today, what was 800 then looks terrible and what is 800 now comparatively looks quite good. But still, 800 on my D810 looks kind of nasty, and 800 on my A7S Mark II is beautiful. So just having the number means nothing. Don't think that because this goes to 200,000 and the D610 only goes to 25,000 that the Pentax is going to be noticeably better. It's not necessarily the case. Now, the last one to round it out, this guy is also weather sealed, fully weather sealed. The Pentaxes tend to be fantastic and they're really confident with it in their, in-show promotions. They often have them under a stream of water, which a lot of companies just wouldn't do just in case. Comparing it to all the others, it's going to be way more weather sealed. So if you're looking for something to go out into the field, fantastic. Now, at that kind of more serious, professional, out in the field type specs out of the way, what about the more social sharing stuff? To be honest, it also smokes most of the competition on those. So it's got GPS and it's got Wi-Fi, which only the 6D matches built in. The 750, the Wi-Fi is an optional module, and the D610, both of those are optional modules. So it's getting that connectivity that's common in mirrorless, but not in DSLR. So great if you're into that kind of thing. Another great thing, it's got dual SD cards, which the Sonys and the Canon don't have. They only had single cards. So overall, I should mention, it's also got a 33-point focusing system in the Pentax, which is relatively few points. Now, it depends what you're shooting, because when I'm shooting with a sports camera like the D4, I would take 1,000 points, corner to corner, if I could get them. When you're tracking something, more points and more coverage on the viewfinder is really, really important and beneficial. When I'm shooting in studio or slower stuff, I tend to use the one central point. So just give me one amazing focus point on those cameras and I'd be happy. I don't need 12, 33, 51. So 33, again, we'll have to see how it actually performs. So on paper, I think this is looking fantastic, and for 1,800 bucks, really a viable option, a really good value option, I should say. To make it a viable option, you're going to need to have a collection of glass already, because they don't have a whole lot out there currently made for that specific camera. That said, they have announced two new lenses. They've got a 15 to 30 f2.8 lens, which looks incredibly like this one from Tamron. It's no secret. I'm 99.99999% sure it's a rebadge. It's completely redesigned on the outside, but the actual lens itself, it's the same lens. They've rebadged it and it's got the same optical formula. It's likely to be the same stabilization. They may have tweaked that though to work better with their camera, because the camera has the built-in stabilization already, but it does have some stabilization in there. So, it's a rebadge, but I wouldn't put that as anything bad. This is a fantastic lens. If you haven't seen it, card on screen that'll show you where I compared it to the 14 to 24, especially the coatings on this, phenomenal. One thing I don't love about it though, the new Pentax one is coming in at $300 more expensive than the Tamron one currently is. Now that may have been part of their agreement that you can rebadge it, but it needs to come out at a certain price, and the Tamron has now dropped. But seeing Tamron don't make this one in the Pentax mount, you're stuck. You need to get the Pentax one. So if you're looking for a wide angle kit, this has the rear weather sealing gasket. I'm not sure how sealed the front is, however, but with the Pentax body, you should have a fairly robust combo there. And then they've also announced this 28 to 105. It's again, such a nasty looking lens. It really reminds me of one of these incredibly old Vivitar or X-Actor lenses with the kind of grip that they have on the rubber, and then just the overall look of it. If you're looking for something that has a retro feel but not a pretty retro, this is the way to go. It's only 500 bucks, but it does make me wonder, there's so many out there 24 to 105 f4 lenses that are fantastic and people love that. So this one being a 3.5 to 5.6, how does that compare? It's half the price. Well, 3.5 is only a third of a stop faster than f4, so at the wide end you can get 3.5, but at 105 you're down at f5.6, so that's a full stop slower. So that's something you really want to keep in mind. Already, if you were using a 2.8 lens, you now are getting a quarter of the light, f2.8 to f4, 4 to 5.6, 2 stops, a quarter of the light at the 105 end of the range. So, you know, if you need something versatile like that and that's your budget, then great, it's there. So overall, Pentaxians can rejoice that their new camera has finally been announced, but they're going to hit the same peril that Sony have, having a great body on the market that people are going to be really interested in, and then the obvious complaints of we need accessories, we need, above all else, we need lenses to support the system to really make it viable. Hopefully, having spent so long getting this camera out, they've been working a lot in the background and actually have lenses ready to go, which I would have hoped they would have announced with this. Anyway, once I get to Tokyo, I will be getting hands-on with it, no doubt. So stay tuned, make sure you like and subscribe and, you know, click to get notifications so that you see my future videos. And if you're in Tokyo, come say hi. I'll be at CP Plus, and I'm also doing workshops there. You can find out about all my international workshops at mattgranger.com/workshops. Thanks, and I'll see you soon with more gear, news, and reviews really soon.